I think another thing that Oda does is he uses the classism and different hierarchies. He uses it a lot in like backstories. So it's
Yeah.
built up even then, right? It was like, okay, things are this bad now, right? But things were really fucked up back then.
Yep.
You know, look at what all these characters went through back then. And so we always have this question: is One Piece, like in the One Piece story, are things getting better or worse? Like, have things gotten better or worse since this person went through this or whatever? But now I definitely agree that the entire buildup of hierarchies and classism in One Piece, and the way they use it to somewhat justify different things they do in the story, I mean, it's masterful for sure.
It's unbelievable, and it also goes to show why our world is the way it is, and it helps you explain some of the things that we deal with in our world. Because when you think about things like oppression, systematic oppression, slavery, and you understand why is something as evil as slavery, why was it ever employed, why is racism a thing, why do people do these things? And a lot of people say it's because people are evil. And in a sense, you would be right to classify that, but it's more than that. It's actually deeper than that. It's about power. At the end of the day, and this goes back to the beginning of our conversation. Depending on how you view human nature, I'm not going to say this as it's an absolute fact, but this is what I've observed. With humans and with human nature, we have a natural inclination to dominate something, or to own something, or to have power over something. When you look at how we have subjugated our world to the point where we are the apex predators of the world, we have destroyed wildlife, we have diminished certain predators out of existence and created safe spaces for us because we're smart enough to do so. That's what we as humans naturally do. We build ourselves up to the point where we are stronger, or we're able to keep ourselves safe from a threat. That's why you have things like countries. That's why you have borders. Also, you have in our history, we have a lot of wars, conquerors. We have slavery, racism. We have sexism, classism. All these categories that we do, we as humans, we naturally process things in categories. So when you look at how today we're dealing with racism and racial struggle, and people wonder why is there still racism in today after we've advanced so far, it's because of what it represents. It represents power. As long as I can discriminate against you, as long as I can look at the color of your skin, and the ideology of those in the mid-Atlantic trade and colonialism, they said, this is the triangle, this is how we live. When they look at black people back in the day, and they looked at colored people back in the day, they thought, we need to teach these savages because we are in a position to bring them up, but under our rule. Because of that ideology, we have what we have today. And that is an innate human instinct that we fight against. And there's some people that fight against it, and there's some people that indulge it. And some people use the illusion of control and order to justify it. So then if you take it all the way, and I'm connecting everything now, you take it to the Gorosei, and you take it to the Void Century, and we take it back to the kingdom, the ancient kingdom. There is a doctrine that the Gorosei preached, that the ancient kingdom had to be erased. A great cleansing had to happen in order to maintain the balance of the world. There are necessary evils that we need to implement, the system of the Yonko, in order to keep control of the seas, to keep order of the seas, and for us to have an enemy to fight. The Yonko are the representative and the Gorosei of the pirates. We are the Gorosei of the free people. In order for us to actually have an enemy to fight and to continue our propaganda that we're fighting the good fight, to join the world government and to go after world peace, that system has to be in place. There has to be a bad side for us to fight. There has to be an endless war for us to justify how we have set up our society. And Oda has painted that in such a beautiful picture, because when you look at what Otahime is doing, and you're looking at what King Neptune is trying to do, they're trying to fight for peace. What happens to the status quo when the fishmen are accepted and they're viewed as equal? What happens?
Yeah, it's crazy because you talking about that made me think about movie I just watched, the Emancipation, and it just shows, like, I mean, it's a slave movie, but it shows that in a way there's always that desperate need to have a purpose, or a way to rally everyone together against this specific thing. And so back then they talked about how they would, you had people that were raised by slaves, and even the people that were raised by slaves, their parents and their people found a way for them to hate slaves and found a way for them to justify owning slaves. It was crazy because the story the guy told was that he was raised by a slave, and then the girl, she was hungry, and then he told his dad that he wanted the slave to come and eat at a table. And then his dad said, "Why are you inviting her to eat at the table?" And he said, "Well, she's hungry sometimes." So his dad brought him and stabbed the slave that raised him in front of him. And at that point, he said, from there, I can have relationships with them, but I can't get too close because they're slaves and they're less than. So going back to the hierarchies, is that some of this is taught and it's lessons learned, and you feel like you have to enforce and carry on this message. And even the guy, as he got older, one of his best people that worked with him were black, and it was like, but he was the worst hunter of slaves in the region. But it's like, how do you justify things like that in regards to where in your head the hierarchy is in place? Like, this has to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just how the way of the world, again, conquest and us owning things and the apex predator. I think it's just so crazy how things can be ingrained in our nature. And and it's sad to think about how, slavery comes about, and just how some of it is just basically taught, and from somebody being different, somebody just having a different religion, different ideology, being from somewhere different, it can just lead to, hey, we have to get them to be like us or think like us. It puts you in a place where it's like, bro, the world is really fucked up.
It's a really, really messed up place. And it's not, the scary thing is maybe this is a little like nihilistic. It's a little nihilistic. And I'm not a nihilist, but I have a view that no matter how much good we try to do, there's always going to be a doctrine that someone is going to try and preach that's going to last, that's going to be taught to the next generation. We're trying to kill racism right now, because racism is something that's been taught years upon years upon years, and people are still being taught that. So we're still fighting that fight, because there are people in power that have created their wealth and their whole history, their family lineage on racism. Their life is founded on racism. And race, not in the sense that they're evil, but it's the fact that their confidence is in the fact that they are above a certain group of people. So in order to get rid of racism is to get rid of the livelihood and history and heritage of a certain group of people, which to me is insane. So you imagine how real that is to us and for everyone that has experienced racism. And then apply it to the One Piece world, and to basically oppose the world government and the ideologies and everything they've built, is to completely destroy 800 years of alleged peace that they've brought to the One Piece world.